Hello! It's time that I made a video talking about Furina. It's kind of got to be done. There's a lot of interesting takes going around, and I should probably do my part to report some findings. So, at a baseline, Furina is the Hydro Archon, releasing in 4.2. Her elemental skill summons 3 animals. These animals are automated attack turrets. Her burst starts a counter at 0 and reads percent HP changes in your party from drain and heal. Overheal should not count for this mechanic. And what those stacks do is they grant you damage percent and healing bonus. Incoming healing bonus specifically, which matters if your name is Kokomi. If your name is not Kokomi, it does not matter. So let's start out with the obvious thing. What does her Hydro application look like? Seemingly, that's the first question I'm sorry, this music's way too loud. I'm sorry, I can't. I am losing my mind. This music is way too loud on my end. Anyway, so the way Furina's Hydro application works is fairly simple. So she has a seahorse, an octopus, and a crab. The seahorse applies Hydro every other hit. The octopus applies Hydro every other hit. The crab applies Hydro every hit. They hit in intervals. This is rounded to the nearest second. So what this ends up being is she applies a little bit less than 1 Hydro app every second. You can kind of quick bloom with this, but either way, like, quick bloom isn't real, so it doesn't really matter. What do I mean by quick bloom isn't real? It's a hyper bloom team, either being double Hydro, double Dendro, double Electro. Double Dendro and double Electro are not fundamentally different teams called Quick Bloom. They are double Electro and double Dendro Hyper Bloom. They are Hyper Bloom teams with Hyper Bloom characters doing Hyper Bloom things, and it just so happens your other characters are able to do aggravate spread damage by virtue of how Hyper Bloom works. No, Xingqiu C6 does not ruin your Alhaitham team. Neither does Yelan C2. These are upgrades, and they are upgrades. You are getting additional blooms that net out at least net neutral the difference. One thing I will mention regarding practicality for Furina's damage. Her damage increases if she is able to, for more party members' HP she is able to drain. I'm sure everyone knows like the full details. I don't want to fully describe her kit because I hope it's already known. I want to focus a bit more on the intricacies. Something a lot of people are missing. Unlike Xingqiu or Yelan, who have bursts that you need to trigger, Furina's E-skill is always doing things. There is no input from the player that has to dictate when her E-skill summons can attack and when they can't. Now, I think this is a very good thing, right? This essentially is removing the player error in Xingqiu Yelan gameplay. No matter what, when you play Furina, you are getting optimal damage from her elemental skill, as long as you are able to contend with the healing mechanic. So as long as your teams have a healer and she is able to drain HP from the party members, you are getting optimal damage from Furina. This is unlike Yelan and Xingqiu, who do require like actual input from the player and can cause wild damage variance. So at a baseline, I want to get that out in the air because it is important and a lot of people are neglecting it. While I could say it's easy to weave and get more waves out of Yelan Xingqiu, that's not everyone. And then regarding the damage from that, if you are able to consistently get Furina to drain everyone state, if every hit drains, you are doing similar to technically slightly more damage than Yelan Xingqiu. So baseline, for now we're ignoring Furina's burst. So you're building the aura, but you don't burst. What is Furina doing? She's only being a Xingqiu, except the only being a Xingqiu thing is in regards to her damage and Hydro Wrap. What she's also doing is putting a slight burden on your party by reducing HP constantly. How difficult will it be to contend with this HP drain? I don't know. And frankly, I don't think it matters because of what her burst does. Furina's burst, as of now, if you just look at the drain and assume you heal off the drain and have no other external damage influence, is roughly 300 stacks from her burst, which could average out to like 30 damage percent for your entire party. What else averages out to 30 damage percent? Ms. Yelan. Except Yelan's is only for an on-fielder. So by using Furina's burst, you are effectively adding a second Yelan. What does this mean in terms of team building? Both Yelan and Furina have fairly intensive energy recharge requirements, but they also both are able to generate more particles than Xingqiu, which is very nice. Shorter cooldowns are a thing, but may not be the most significant. I would argue 5 stars at C0 can be easier to obtain than 4 stars at C6. And Jingcho is a fairly C6 dependent character, or 4-star at least. So at a baseline for team building, if you were to draft a Yelan Furina team, you'll want to have a healer, which is generally going to be a given for most players. And in return for that, like, the maintenance cost of using a healer, which you may be doing anyway, you're getting 60 damage percent for your on-fielder, and you're getting 30 damage percent for the rest of the team. In terms of Yelan's damage contribution, this can roughly be net neutral with Jingcho's resistance shred from C2, except that Jingcho only shreds Hydro resistance, so if there are more characters in the party of different elements, they're just getting more of a buff. What about Furina with Hu Tao? Yeah, it's called Furina Yelan Hu Tao, and a healer. Ideally, you use a healer that synergizes and actually gives something to all the party members. Would Diana work? We're working on it, okay? I know Prototype Amber works with 4-piece maidens. I know. We're cooking on it. Which healers consistently heal off for HP drain? Seemingly all of them. If you want to look at a 18-second rotation, Furina is draining 1.9 per second times an 18-second rotation, 34% of your health. If your rotation is 21 seconds, it's still less than 40% of your health. I don't think it's that hard to get 40% of your health back every rotation. Some healers work better than others. I think I just explained. I don't think it matters. Especially when Furina is also stacking you on healing bonus. Unless you got dying. Barbara and Chi-Chi C6s. Baiju, any Dendro teams that would be good with her, you just use Shinobu. The thing is, regarding Dendro, you're going to be playing Bloom. She's a Hydro character, which means you need a character to trigger your Blooms, which will either mean you're playing Nilou or Hyper Bloom, realistically, because you're not going to be playing Virgin. And it just so happens that currently there are 2 characters that can trigger Hyper Bloom, and one of them is already a healer. So Baiju is kind of redundant. Can you cut a healer with Furina C2? It will certainly be easier to. It will certainly be easier to do so. You might not be able to do it every time, especially in more aggressive content, but it will definitely be easier. Why do Sode TCs have different takes on Furina? I don't think they looked at it correctly. I think the reads are incorrect. A character needing energy doesn't matter, because you can just build energy. And you can play teams that facilitate that energy. Thoughts on bursting every other rotation? It's complicated, and I'm not really sure how equipped I am to answer this question. But you can technically do it. You're still getting her damage without bursting. You're just losing the team damage aspect. You can technically do it. Oh no! You're just getting a Jingcho instead of a Jingcho or instead of a second Yelan. Oh my god! Oh my god! Regarding that comparison, a lot of people would mention that I am discounting Jingcho's interruption resistance and Hydro Wrap. I'm looking at double Hydro teams where the Hydro Wrap is irrelevant, is my first response to that. My other response to that is the prerequisite for Furina is you have a defensive option in your team. Very often people will use defensive options with Jingcho anyway, but specifically in the event of Furina, it is a given. You will have a defensive option, specifically a healer in your team. You will have one, otherwise you aren't really going to be doing anything. So Jingcho's interruption resistance, damage reduction, seemingly isn't relevant. Resistance interruption is overrated? No, I don't agree with that. I think resistance interruption is very well respected, or deserves to be respected. Very important. I just don't think it's important when it's not important. When you have apt defensive options in your team, like at a baseline, it doesn't matter. You do like resistance interruptions from Jingcho, it's comfy. Nice. There's nothing wrong with that. Furina is like very aptly giving you a damage increase for making your team more fragile. Like, that's the mechanic that you're interacting with, right? Furina, very similarly to Yelan, is offensive utility. It is not defensive utility. It is very significant offensive utility. And that offensive utility seems to be, well, overwhelmingly good. Like, it's 32 damage percent for your entire team, right? It's a second Yelan buff. It's a Kazuha buff. Like, I can't understate the importance of this. It is Hu Tao's sub 50 bonus. Those are similar, like, for the idea of how much damage percent you're getting from Furina on average. Technically, you would get more because of the way healing can be loaded. It gets a bit complicated, and I have not gone through with that because frankly, I don't think it matters. For the sake of what I'm looking at. Early conclusion is that it's really good. The specifics of exactly how specifically good it is in X, Y, and Z team don't really matter. If it's more damage, it's more damage, and more damage is good damage. And yes, her C1 gives you 150 up front, which is 32 damage percent. It's very good. The other out of baseline thing Furina does is enable Mershisei Hunter for characters. For characters like Ito and Hu Tao, Mershisei Hunter becomes their best in slot set if they're able to use it. In the event of Hu Tao, if you're familiar with Shim versus Crimson Witch, without looking at the burst, Shim is roughly a 6% damage increase over Crimson Witch. Mershisei Hunter is roughly a 6% damage increase over Shiminawa's, without factoring Furina's damage percent. When you factor in Furina's damage percent buff on top of that, it becomes a bigger difference from like 8 to 10%. So yes, enabling Mershisei Hunter at a baseline puts Furina ahead of a lot of things. Mershisei Hunter is a seemingly little overloaded set. Thoughts on Furina chambers? Some chambers have high unavoidable damage, or damage you can intentionally take if you have the healing. I think that speaks more to the current enemy design that miHoYo have been using. Yeah, I think that speaks more to the enemy design that miHoYo have been implementing. Basically, since Sumeru, enemies have hit you harder and have punished you for having innate elements. What about Vermilion? Set. Lamau. Have to burst? Cringe. Specifically regarding characters like Riesli, Vermilion requiring a burst up front when you don't want to burst to do your dip. But you don't have to burst to do damage? Just not relevant. How many stacks do you get with Mershisei when she's under 50k since Furina won't drain HP? It doesn't matter, you're gonna have a healer. You're gonna be constantly dipping above and below 50. As long as you're dipping above and below 50, even if you want to look at Furina's C2, that also, Furina's C2 literally causes dips in HP. Because it has a recovery mechanic with a duration of 2.5 seconds. Furina's buff is inherently limited by the amount of damage you can take. You can't heal over 100. So you need stacks, you need a way to, or you need to hurt yourself for more besides what Furina is doing. So if you're just healing neutrally, Furina is good. But if you're able to drain your own HP, and you will, because damage is somewhat unavoidable in a lot of recent combat encounters, you bring a healer, and theoretically, you should never be an issue. Healing neutrally is not an issue. The issue arises when you need to heal in excess to neutral. That's the more problematic thing. I also appreciate that she doesn't have to burst to do most of her kit. She still is draining your health, which is enabling Mershisei, and she still is doing off-field damage and applying Hydro without energy. Granted, I don't think you're making her shine without energy, but she's still functional, which is important, unlike some other characters who are non-functional without energy on a casual level. It is a nice little thing that they didn't have to do, but they did. Regarding constellations, I should probably talk about Furina's constellations. I don't trust these results, but they're the results I have for now, based on my understanding of the stack generation potential from C2. The damage from C2 is seemingly irrelevant compared to the stack gen. C1 is plus 150 stacks. C2 is plus 150 stacks. C5 makes those stacks worth more. And C6 doubles or triples C2, which doubles stacks besides C1. What does this mean? 4 out of 6 of Furina's constellations are team DPS increases, which seems a bit overloaded. It seems a little bit overloaded. I'm not sure how much I trust this, but it is the result I have currently. Furina is certainly not balanced around her constellations. Her constellations exist to bypass her balancing. She's balanced around having a high ER rec. C4 gets rid of the ER. She's balanced around the stacks need to build up over time. C1 gives you a surplus up front. Again, C2 gives you a surplus up front. C3 is just more damage. So I think they'll buff her a 5-star weapon. To put it simply, for the amount of stats Furina's 5-star weapon currently gives you, Splendor gives you 24 elemental skill damage percent and 24 HP percent, with 88 crit damage. What is the most similar weapon to this? Aqua Simulacra. What does Aqua Simulacra do at R1? 16 HP percent and 20 damage percent. And 88 to crit damage. I don't know if you've noticed the difference. Splendor just gives more stats than Aqua Sim. I believe Splendor gives the most stat of any 5-star weapon. Besides Key of Kajnasu for its signature character. I believe. T-Pulse might be close. But Furina's signature weapon seemingly is loaded enough as is. Someone says Splendor is dog. Good. Good for them. She needs ER. ER is important. Her best 4-star weapons are all ER weapons. Build ER. That being said, much like Aqua Simulacra, when you're looking at teams that are able to reduce that ER requirement, or the constellations that reduce that ER requirement, those weapons shine very well. I do not think Splendor is a bad weapon. I do not think Splendor needs a buff. I think you're overreacting and not really understanding like the full context of the weapon. Kind of at the end of the day, Furina gives so much stuff at a baseline that it's seemingly impossible for this character to not be good. In specifically double hydro comps, she is changing the game. She is causing large DPS increases for these double hydro comps that are already incredibly popular. Double hydro teams are good. Don't lowball them, don't underestimate them. Furina seemingly plays very well with them. Just dealing enough damage ER isn't an issue, that's not a real solution. ER is not a hard stat to build, inherently. It is a somewhat accessible stat, especially for Furina, who is literally covered in energy recharge options. Regarding like a casual perspective for Furina, people aren't gonna like that she's constantly trading her party members. People aren't going to like that she makes you more fragile, but that is also a key part of her like design and implementation. It's very risk reward, and the reward you're getting for the risk is very worth it numerically. Whether you want that subjectively is entirely up to you. All I can tell you is numerically, she's very strong and very much a gain. Oh yeah, I'm gonna complain about this. The take that Furina is useless or like not necessarily an upgrade unless you're playing Fontinian characters. Well, not entirely divorced from reality at a glance, is entirely divorced from reality when you look at the numbers. Anyone who says that should probably look a little deeper. I would also remind people, 4-star constellations are not free and are not something you should take for granted. What non-Fontaine teams do I recommend? Furina C2. Why does C2 matter? Like, again, it's like any double hydro team. What yellow team do I recommend? Double hydro. What Furina team do I recommend? Hey, you know that answer I just gave you? Baba Booey. Yeah, like, I think that's it for Furina. I'm gonna pass this off to Court so we can start editing. I hope he gets it out tonight. 40 minutes of footage, how hard could it be?